You're watching Local 44 Morning Brew, local news that matters.
At this place in history, we're in Newport with Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, Steve Perkins. What are we talking about today?
So we're going to talk a bit about smuggling on Lake Memphremagog behind us. Scot Wheeler, who's the publisher of the Northland Journal, is going to tell us about immigrant smuggling from the early 20th century.
I've been recording history now for about 25 years, the history of this region exclusively, and I'd heard bits and pieces of the Chinese smuggling through this area, but it wasn't until earlier this year that I really began to delve into it. And it was like, wow, how did I not know this? I don't mean there was just a trickle of people, of Chinese immigrants coming through this area. It was hundreds and it was thousands. It was started 1882, the enactment of the Chinese Exclusion Act. A lot of the Chinese immigrants were dropped off on the west coast of Canada, and the ones who wanted to go to the east coast, they were brought all the way across by train, and then they came across, well, you had some Canadians who smuggled them. Americans also became involved in it because it was very profitable.
Going back to the Chinese Exclusion Act, if I remember my U.S. history correctly, this is really the first time that the United States made a law that said a specific people could not come into this country. And I think it was fear against the Chinese taking all the railroad jobs in the West.
I will say it's kind of disappointing. The person who signed it into law was a Vermonter, President Chester. Right.
What was appealing about this location? Why the big influx of immigration here?
The people coming here, I believe, were the ones passing through to get to like Boston, New York, and you know, you think this is rural now. You know, it was very rural back then.
And a completely really unguarded border. I mean, you had some revenuers looking for folks moving booze across the border, but, you know, a fairly porous area.
You got to remember, they weren't in high-speed cars in the 1882. They were going by, you know, horse and buggy, by foot. I will say, the newspaper accounts of the time, they're rather shocking though. At first I didn't know how to handle it because these days and time the wording was just horrible. It was racist, horrible.
A lot of the Exclusion Act, if I remember rightly, a lot of that was driven by industry and the press.
It's an amazingly sad part of our history, but you know, my theory on history is there's a lot of good, happy things to record. But on the other hand, if you're going to really record history, you've got to really get down and dirty and talk about some really bad things.
At this place in history.
You're watching Local 44 Morning Brew, local news that matters.